Republicans and the Democrats are both looking at key swing states as potential wins, and it's been a bit topsy-turvy, the whole election cycle here, with some Democrats doing well in Republican strongholds and some Republicans doing well in Democrats' strongholds. But nevertheless, it's probably one of the most consequential midterms in the history of U.S. Political elections. And that's because it has ramifications not only for the Biden administration's next 2 years and their big policy agenda, but also because it has ramifications for the stability of the democracy and the integrity of the voting and electoral processes in the country. I really see it as sort of a bellwether election, too, in the sense that it could measure the enthusiasm of the voter for another Donald Trump run at the presidency in 2024. So depending on the outcome of these midterms will give them a sense of whether Donald Trump could indeed be a viable candidate then.
And he's waiting on that outcome as well, isn't he? Like Donald Trump is waiting on Tuesday's outcome to announce whether he will be running on 20.
Yes, he's given every indication that he intends to run. But yes, being a person who has described himself as not liking to be, wanting to be a loser, or seen as a loser, he's obviously waiting to see what the outcome of some of these tightly contested seats will be, whether some of his hand-picked candidates win, or even some of the ones that he's endorsed and backed. Will come through. Of course, if they do, that's going to make him look like a winner. He's going to be prepared to pretty soon put his hand up for the candidacy, because he's facing an enormous number of legal pressures. And I think he sees running for the candidacy as a bit of an armor of protection from facing courts and depositions.
And on the other side, I mean, historically, the party in the White House generally does suffer losses in the first midterm.
Correct.
But Joe Biden's popularity is polling particularly low. What's behind that?
Well, there's many factors behind it. Primarily in this moment, it's inflation and the economy, and as your piece pointed out, the cost of living, gas prices, and social issues. But also in America now, we're living with this partisan divide that has deepened over the years. In the case of Biden's current polling ratings, he's sitting at around 42%. He's notched up 1 or 2 points. But, you know, for a little historical perspective, when I was at the White House in Ronald Reagan's first midterm cycle, his approval rating was at 41%, so just slightly below where Biden is now. And that's not uncommon after the first 2 years of a presidency. And I'd also point out that in 2016, 2018, and 2020 elections, voters have rejected the party that they just put in power and voted the opposite way. So it shouldn't be no surprise that Republicans could overturn or retake the majority in the House in this. The question will be, by how much? Now, right now, analysts are projecting that the House, the Republicans could win 20 to 24 seats in the House. That doesn't seem like a red wave. Strategists tend to say, well, if it's around 30. Now, again, for historical perspective, George W. Bush in his midterm, one of his midterms, he lost 30 seats in the House and called it, you know, a thumping. President Obama lost an incredible 63 seats in a House in the midterm elections in House seats and called it a thumping. A shellacking. In 2018, Donald Trump lost 41 seats in the House, and he blamed other Republicans for the loss. But so let's keep that in perspective. And what's important right now is it's very close. The Republicans only need 5 seats to win in the House. They only need 1 seat to flip in the Senate to gain majority control there. So it is on a knife edge.
Just away from the data and from the numbers, this election is also so crucial to highlight the sort of direction that America is going into. I mean, President Biden, has warned that candidates may not respect results. We also heard from President Obama warning that these are dangerous. There will be a dangerous climate after Tuesday. We just had the attack on Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband as well.
Yep.
The bipartisan divide that you talk of is starting to become very violent now.
Yes.
Where does that come from? Why has that happened?
Well, a couple of factors. One, from my own experience in both the Reagan and the George H.W. Bush administrations, it really became clear to me how important leadership is and the direction that leaders give to people. So I squarely put a lot of the talk of violence on people who are in office or running for office and play with that fear that Americans seem to be harboring against one another. I would also put it down to right-wing media. There's been a landscape of it in the United States, and I've been talking about it for a number of years. That's really been going on since the 1990s. And with the advent of the internet, social media, and certain right-wing media outlets, and this has become a business model. And in America, unfortunately, it has created a lot of conspiracy theories and distrust in the institutions of the democratic government, and it continues, and it's escalating. And as you point out, with the recent attack on the Speaker's husband, but also in the January 6th insurrection, which is still being investigated.